Okay, guys, do you think we should start now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, lovely. So, Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to everybody present. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. Uh, and thank you everybody for attending, especially cold night. So winters have just come in, and I'm sure that you guys are enjoying yourself. And hopefully, this is in line with a lot of other series of lectures that Aligarh Renaissance has incorporated over the years. I'm told. Um, and I wish them all the best, obviously, as they're doing a lot of good work, and everybody involved who has prepared and organized this talk. And hopefully, we'll have some learning. I hope the students who are here, I'm thinking that they are from first year to final year onwards. Uh, so hopefully, there'll be some general topics discussed and then specific things as well. And I hope that you take away from this some learning which will help you eventually in presenting yourself, to employers and generally in the world. So my name, with that, I'll just introduce myself very quickly. My name is Mohammad Farhan Saeed. I am an alumni of Aligarh. I've studied, I was brought up here in Aligarh, and I did my schooling from Lady Fatima, then Winter Circle, then 10 plus 2 here, and then in the engineering college. I'm a civil engineer by profession. I passed out in 95, and then I worked here for 3 years in Citibank because in those days, an engineering with a management degree was the vogue, and that's what I had in mind. So I worked in risk management for 3 years in Citibank in New Delhi. And then I went to Australia in Melbourne to do my MBA, which I completed in 2002, and then started working in Australia. I sort of migrated to Australia in that time while I was doing my MBA. I got that citizenship and then worked there for about 15 years as a city engineer. Actually, worked there for a couple of years in risk management again. And then as a civil development engineer in Melbourne, I had a government job there. Uh, and then I came back to India because the parents needed us a bit. It has been very rewarding. And then for the previous 5 years, since 2019, I'm working as a training and placement officer at the engineering college. And some placement results have been very good, which I will let you know soon. So generally, well, this is my background, and I have worked there for studied in India and worked in India, and then I have gone overseas to study and worked overseas, and I've migrated to another country, so I can hopefully give you a broad overview or generally what students would eventually go through once they pass out and do their degree. So I can touch on those sections. However, the topic of today is, CV and writing your CV and presenting yourself for interviews. So that will be the integral part of our discussion, hopefully. So, with regards to CV, and you guys might have heard about a resume as well, I suppose. So, many people you will find they really don't know a difference between a CV and a resume, which you should know. Generally speaking, somebody might ask you that in an interview wherever you go. And knowledge is power, as you know, you get a lot of confidence out of knowing things, relevant things. So a CV is a short form for curriculum vitae. So all the vital information about yourself is contained in a CV, and therefore it is a comprehensive document. It can be longer than one page, even for a fresher, and it tells pretty much everything about the person, their complete interests, uh, and their skills and their qualifications about them, their objective. On the other hand, the resume is generally a shorter affair compared to a curriculum vitae. That's the major thing. And generally, a resume is designed towards a specific job description. So if you're applying for a specific job and you're sending out a concise thing to them for an overview, then you should make it a resume. And then if you are applying in general or giving a broader overview of yourself, then that's a curriculum vitae. So that's something which you need to know, and you can find these things out online in more detail, hopefully. So that's one thing, that's the foundation of things. Now, setting up a nice resume, how would you go about doing it? These days it's become easier. Reason being, you have the internet and you can have, thousands of types of CVs or resumes. You can just type in and look at them. So, where I'm coming from is I worked in the previous 5 years with a lot of employers who are hiring in the engineering college, and then they do their technical tests. Sometimes they would do their aptitude test, and once all that is over, they would have interviews or group discussions, and they review the CV in the first go. So from that background, coming from the business end of things, I can tell you that any fresher, whether you are in final year or you are in first year, second year students can start preparing a resume. Always start with a point of view where just look at that document that you're preparing and look at yourself. If you are hiring yourself, how would you want to see that person? Now, if you have a specific job description, if you're in final year, for example, and you're a bit more mature and you have updated all your skills, which I will come to soon, how to prepare, increase your resume from first year onwards. Then if you have a specific job description, then you will take a look at what requirements are there for that job. And you address those requirements in the resume because you will show you might have two or three or four skills. For example, a Java developer, uh, he knows that language of Java. It's not used as much as, for example, the language of Python these days, but there could be a job description. So you will highlight the skill of Java language first and foremost because you're sending it to according to that particular job description. Or even if you're a general, if you're in humanities and you're making a resume, they would obviously need people with good communication skills. So you need to highlight that at your part, for example, that's the first thing that you will tell them. That's part of making a resume specific to a job description. And for general people who are starting to make a resume or a CV, have a look at a nice example of it online, something that you like yourself. And there's so many examples, they stand out because when you send out resumes these days, sometimes there are thousands of students who are applying for the same thing. How would you stand out? So something which is pleasing to the eye, which is nicely, a nice font is used. The presentation is to the point. If somebody is looking after, even 100 resumes or 100 CVs, they don't really have the time to sift through one, two, three, or four pages. So for a fresher, generally a single page is good enough, and you can give all your major information in that, and but nicely set up and seen. So it's better to have a few dot points instead of paragraphs, right? These days, generally acceptable is, you need to have a photograph on the top, right or left side. And then another, is there a problem that you cannot hear me? I just got a message saying I'm a bit inaudible. Is it breaking up?
No, sir, you are audible.
Yes,
Okay, I
sir,
just
to
sent a
us, you
message.
are audible, sir.
You can hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Pretty perfect.
Yes,
Lovely,
sir.
lovely. Someone called Hamad just sent a message saying you're inaudible. So they might have, Ahmad, you might have a problem at your own end, maybe with the network, because everybody else seems to be okay. I just hope that the major part of this information gets through to you, so you get the crux of it. Because I'm telling you the business end of things, where I have feedback from employers and I've seen what they look at and how they would look at things. So many times I found, So let's get back to doing the CV. Find out a nice example that you like. That's what human beings would look at. So it should be aesthetically pleasing. That is the first thing. So it makes somebody sort of stops and takes a second look at it. That this is nice. They've set it up so well. They've obviously given it time and therefore importance. So people would like to see that. And because why I'm saying this, that you're not going there in most places personally these days. And that is your first introduction to an employer. So even from first year, you can start setting up a CV. So you have a photograph on one side, either right or left, and on the other side, you can have all your soft connecting points, like your obviously your name. And for myself, even in my CV, I have put this. My qualifications are on the top in a bracket. My CV currently on the TPO website is not the most current one, but it's there. It is the new one is very similar to it, but it's very clear what my qualifications are because that's what you want to know. Because for example, a company comes to me and they're hiring from electrical, like L&T, Larsen and Toubro, they hire from all branches of engineering. So when I send a CV and goes to a person, it should be very clear to them what they're looking for. You should think from their point of view, and they don't really have the time. They don't need to find your qualification further down. The first thing I write, okay, MBA, BSc Engineering Civil, Mohammed Farhan Saeed in brackets, MBA, BSc Engineering Civil, Environmental, whatever I have. So that's very, very clear upfront um, as an introduction. And then I give my, LinkedIn profile, my phone number, my email, anything else that you have on social media, which is, professional. You can put the information on that on the top. And then for me, for freshers, generally things that work, you can separate. So for example, somebody in engineering or in any bachelor's of, you will write that first, right? Bachelor in English, BA English, or BA Psychology, or however. So it'll be very clear, which means that you've obviously done class 10th, class 12th. Obviously, you've done bachelor's, right? So generally, I've seen people, the first thing they will do after the objective is write class 10th, class 12th percentage. So that's a given thing, that you, if you've done a bachelor's, and obviously you have done, you know, class 10th and class 12th. So you can put it further down. Take a look at a CV or resume of about from the point of view of what will you be interested in looking at the person. The first thing that you'll be interested in is how does the person's skill match to my job that I'm offering. So from my point of view, after the objective, I would first and foremost address that job description or the general thing that you want to convey to them, saying, these are my interests. This is what I have. So if you have distinguished marks, you could highlight that on the top. Even on the top, you can say, gold medalist uh, in BA psychology or MA or however. If you have that or top three ranks, first position, second, third position, you can highlight that because that's immediately comes to notice. And then you can give the details later on. But you can separate a CV after the objective into two columns on the same page. So on one side of the column, you have all your academic qualifications and your academic work. So for example, if you have done an internship somewhere, that is the highest professional thing that you're involved in, right? At this point in time, being a student. Even if you're doing your graduation, you did your summer internship. So what you would quickly highlight and tell them, this is the practical work I have done. So you'll say internship, duration, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever. This is the topic, or this was the work I did. In bullet points, it is better. It's very clear and conveys to them their point of interest from the employer's point of view. And on the other side, you can have your interests. So you can tell them, this is my hobby. This is I like reading or I like traveling, sports, debates, singing, music, whatever, other co-curricular activities. And then further down, you can give that's one thing which I really like to see for freshers, single page resume or CV. Generally, that's what people look at and set up very, very nicely so that it stands out. So the font that you use, you can choose that font going online and present it in such a manner that it's easy to read. It's, as they say, pleasing to the eye. And so people stop and have a second. And you can have obviously a colored resume. That's generally the norm these days. There's no problem. You should not clutter it up with too much information. So writing something like, I did my class 10 from such and such city, from this is the name of my school. Um, I don't think that's really required in a professional CV or resume. So bachelor students can start, first year students, for example, they can start a CV at this point and then add your basics. And I would say have the highest or the most relevant skill on the top, and then go down further as you move forward. So by the time you come into final year, you have a fairly nicely set up CV. And then you can, because by that time, there's a change in students, in their mindset, in their approach. As you come through, initially, as when you once you're in final year and looking for a job, you have a different mindset. You are more senior, you're a bit more mature, you're a bit more focused. So if you're going for a specific job, a specific company, you will have a look at that, read about them online, what they're doing, what business they are in, how big they are, how many, offices they have, what is their market, who are their competitors. And therefore you can get out a few things. For example, I do mainly engineering placement work. So if a company is working in a certain engineering field, there are multiple verticals in any engineering field, right? So you would see what is their thrust area, what is their major look um, market, and who are their competitors, and then you would put in something which matches with that company's profile if they're looking to hire. Obviously, you will find something in their job description, and then you could also gauge the market. For example, you might say that this is a new company which is trying to break into a market where established players are there. So like a semiconductor industry. India is going big in semiconductors, doing, electronics, engineering design, whatever the field of work. So you can put something as a dot point which will attract them. The first thing that you can see that they are trying to break into that market, and therefore, how can you be an asset into breaking into that particular market? What skill would you bring with you? So that's about setting up a CV and a resume, just general stuff, obviously. And we will go down to a little bit more, I would say, specific things about, and I'm look open to questions anytime. You can feel free to, ask a question in between. You can unmute yourself if you think, or you can ask questions at the end. I will leave that to you. I'm happy to have an interactive session. So, uh, moving on to an overview of interviewing skills, right? How would you face an interview or a JD, a group discussion? Group discussion is a bit different because most companies I've seen, they would have a group discussion, but they will allow a specific time for, they'll give you a topic and they'll have 10 students, for example, and they will say, okay, this is your topic. We give you 1 minute to jot down your points, and then we'll give you 2 minutes or 1 minute again to present it. That's one type of GD. And there's another type of group discussion where it's open for everybody, and whoever is more, you know, I would say dominant, speaks a bit more. But then companies look out for people who are giving everybody a chance and who also speak well. So that's one part of going to interviews and going through the recruitment process, the different types of group discussions. So make sure when you come to a group discussion, I find myself, you have to assert yourself because sometimes you are brushed aside. There's somebody sometimes in a group who will just keep talking and, overwhelm everybody else. That generally does not, go very well with employers. They would rather have people who are balanced. But sometimes if they're asking for a sales opportunity, for example, they like that kind of attitude. They would say, okay, he's overbearing and he gets his point through. He makes sure that he's heard, or he or she is heard. So, but generally speaking, I would say that if students who say their piece, but they also make sure that they give everybody else a chance, that stands you in better stead. If you if somebody is too overwhelming, too overpowering, and you see that you haven't got a chance, a few others haven't got a chance to speak, then you can say that, okay, I have understood this is what you've said so far. And I would say that might be good that we don't have too much time. So we might, I would say that I would propose that we also get a chance to speak. We have a couple of points as well, me and my other colleagues here. So that sometimes makes things, very, um, I would say, positive and in your favor, generally speaking. So that's a group discussion. With regards to an interview, for example, for group discussions, again, I would like to say one part is that you need to be aware of what is happening around the world. So it's not a bad idea to keep um, abreast of the latest news. So you can sometimes get, things from that point of view, what's happening around the world, and you need to know about what is happening. Like, UPSC aspirants, they are always on top of the news. They make sure that they know about things and pros and cons of things, but that's the highest end of it. But you should be aware, going into group discussions and interviews. And I've seen some employers, uh, because once you have come through a technical test and an aptitude test, generally in an interview, they will also see how widely your how wide your horizons are. If in engineering, if you're going to do design work, it might be just a technical interview. But I've seen employers taking interviews, trying to gauge the overall personality of students as well. And especially if you have a client interface, sometimes. Like Schneider Electric, they give a really good package to us, 12 lakhs per annum. Every year they take three, four, five students from campus, mainly from electrical engineering. So they do like people who are technically good, and they go through that process of, written and aptitude and then interviews. But their job description is partly sales as well. They have a customer interface, going to other companies, trying to sell that electronic and electric product to them. So they make sure that their overall personality is pleasing, and that's a part of their job description. So depends on where you're growing. All this is part of growing up, getting to understand the real world. And a university is, a pilot project of sending you out to face the real world, preparing you to face the real world. And I would also say, Alhamdulillah, in AMU, because I've grown up here, I've studied here. I also used to play tennis. I was the tennis captain of the university from 91. I was in the team from 89 to 95. And so we traveled a lot from the university. And that was the real purpose of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, Allah Arham, was to make students who are aware of the world, in line with the most recent scientific developments, and confident. And that's what you find, that generally speaking, when you go these days anywhere in the world, with the social media, you just put in, whatever city you go to, Chicago, Aligarh Muslim University, you will find alumni is there, and connect with them. And they're all generally doing very well. You'll find alumni around the world. And even the UAE, in the Arab lands, you'll find them doing really well because of an overall development that they, at least in my time, that they used to have. So all this is part of, making you comfortable with these things, and how you face the real world, how you present yourself. So coming down with that said, coming down to interviews, I would like to point out a few things that you should always keep in mind. So the first thing always goes, the first point I said to you was, how would you like yourself to be if you are going to hire somewhere? If you ask yourself that question when you're going for, preparing a CV, preparing a resume, going for an interview, how, if you are the employer, what would you like to see? So I would say 60 to 70% of preparation lies in that question. If you have an understanding, you will present yourself in that fashion, and you will be okay. The other major point will be communication. What does communication means? It not just does not only mean speaking, talking, and saying. You know, you can use fewer words, but if you have weight in those words, that carries a lot of that would carry its own impression. So generally, you would find that there are sometimes very short interviews because employers would already gauge you as you are dressed, how you present your file. You bring in a creased, folded CV which you put in front of them, or you bring it out in a very nice, printed paper, take it out of a file and present it softly to them. How you enter, how do you say hello? Are you in formal dresses? I've had students sometimes come in for interviews very shabbily dressed. I've sent them back home and I've rescheduled their interview. Company is there, and I would tell them somebody else to, come in, fill in for them, and then tell them to go back and change because it's not worth. What they see is that you are not giving them importance if you are, let's say shabbily dressed or poorly presented. It just sends a bad impression, and if they're on campus, it reflects upon us as well. But anywhere you go, presentation carries a lot of weight. You might have, for example, if you go to a restaurant, you might go to any street side dhaba and get a really good taste in a dish. The same dish, even if it doesn't taste that much, it's presented in a five-star hotel nicely, they will charge you for it. Costs more just because of presentation where they are. So that's something which is, right or wrong, it's there in the world. You will see that. Sometimes you would say that, street side dhaba, that they are selling a much better dish and a much tastier dish, much better dish. They should be charging this amount, and but that's how the world is. So you have to sometimes, understand the real world and move with it. So I would say that the presentation is always good, it's always required. It always makes you stand out. Uh, so always be nicely dressed, nicely groomed when you go for interviews. And then in part of communication, a big part of communication is listening. So hearing yourself out. When somebody is asking you a question, it doesn't generally pay if you don't know the answer, you can say no. Or a very important point is that you can ask them that this is what I've understood. Is this what you're asking, sir? Or instead of, just beating about the bush and trying to go around the question, because you really can't. Generally, people who are interviewing are at least been in that business for 5, 10 years, if not 15, 20 years. So you can't really, pull the wool over their eyes. And if you answer three questions out of five, that's a very good interview. Nobody knows everything. And uh, if you're able to answer that, that's generally supposed to be a good interview. And if interviews are longer and they grill you too much, that's also a very good sign because they obviously seem to like you and they want to talk to you a bit more. That's what I've seen in terms of interviews. So that's how you come across to them. Is very, very important. Listening is very good part of it. Make sure that you're able to listen. That's an art. You can read about it online. What does listening entail? What does it mean? Uh, it will always, always stand you. It will make you a really good team player. And that's one thing which companies also look out for, that are they good for, you know, are they able to work in a team? Majority of the work that you will find, you always need to be a team player. So you think about others. So in that relation, sometimes, they'll ask you questions. Why should we hire you? Pros and cons, give us something, tell us something negative about yourself. So that doesn't really mean that you have to, bash yourself in front of them. You should present something which is positive in a way. Like for example, I've a lot of students, I've used it myself. They would say, sir, I have sometimes I get too caught up in details. So I go into too much detail and spends more time and I waste a bit of time. So that is generally the, you can call it negative, but it's not really. It good attention to detail. An employer is always happy with that. It basically shows them that you are aware of things and you're trying to improve yourself. So many signals go from that kind of question. And how do you handle? Sometimes they'll put you under pressure because they want to see how you perform under pressure, how positive you are, how mature you are, how confident you are. So all those things, if you these preparations are, if you're prepared well, it makes you relaxed in an interview, and that also conveys to employers. That's also a big part of appearing in interviews. So if you're in the first year or second year, and you're preparing yourself, this is a good time. Always start with that. And then if you already know in today's day and age that this is where I want to be, this is the specific stream that I want to be in. So you can prepare yourself. You can choose internships in that line of work. And therefore, when you go for a placement, then you will have that particular stream of work. Or if you're not, even in general, if you start now, uh, you can set yourself up and you will slowly see that, even if you look at one company or two companies or in a 2 week period, it all adds up in your memory, in your personality, and it orients you. Once you're oriented, you are, generally speaking, you are confident and relaxed. So I would say that these are some major key points that I have found in terms of, what employers would look at you for things that they would be interested in. And upon the end, if I say, जैसे कहते हैं 100 बात की एक बात अगर मैं आपसे कहूँ तो वो ये है कि they are whatever the job description is, employers are interested to see that this particular person, he or she, will they be able to hold that position and take my project to the end. So always keep the big picture in mind, because they're not coming here disjointed. They're not looking at, a broken thing in itself. That position which you will always apply for is connected to so many different things in that organization. So you can get to see where this position is coming from and then prepare yourself accordingly. Always have the big picture in mind. If you have that, that will also prepare you, um, and make you more confident and, always be in your favor. So I would say that these are some major points that came to me and from my experience in India, overseas, and interacting with employers here on campus, and companies who majority of them are, hiring online these days. Um, these are the major points that I've had. So I would thank you again for this opportunity and then open the floor for questions if you guys like. That's okay.
Thanks a lot, sir, for the enlightening session. I'm sure that our audience has gained a lot from your expertise. Now, as sir has suggested, if you have any queries or doubts, please feel free to ask or drop them in the chat box. I'll just read it out for you if anyone have any doubts or queries.
Yeah, that'll be good. I think we have one question.
So, hi, sir.
Good. Thank you. How are
So,
you?
first of all, I would like to thank you and the Aligarh Renaissance team. They gave us an opportunity to hear you, sir. So, I would like to
Uh,
know, sir, do you have any sample CV over there so that we can have a look upon for better understanding?
Look, that's what I said to you. I mean, these days, really, there are thousands of CVs online, and I just came to know actually yesterday that I was supposed to deliver this session. I was initially thinking that I'm part of it. Somebody would be delivering. I'll be there as part of the panel. So I don't really have a presentation. However, even if you go online, you'll find so many of them these days. That is the great power of, Google and other things these days. Platforms, there's thousands of them. I had a look some time ago, and they were really wonderful ones. So that's what I said in the first place. That go and take a look. Even if you put, am I talking to Akhila? There's a question here from a student,
Yes.
Akhila, BALLB 50 year, or it doesn't matter, whoever it is. You can actually put in your field of study and put in for resumes. And something which you aesthetically see pleasing, which looks nice, it's easy on the eyes, easy to read. Wants you to stop and read it. That's something which will be workable. It's not rocket science. There's nothing. Basics of the CVs I described to you, I think, in the session. That's what employers look for. But I would just say that don't put, your 10, 12th qualification on the top. It is a given that you would have done that. Do that down the bottom, a bit further down. F- Put in your photograph, your communication, your soft connect, phone number, email IDs, LinkedIn, and whatever. Then your objective. The objective should be really nice, um, make sense, not a generic one. So upgrade my skills, and that's what people write, and be a asset to the company. So that's sure that is there. Uh, but the first thing after that you should write is what that employer will get out of you. If you have a job description, that's great. If you don't, you're setting out a general one, then how you should read about the company, and then what they need. And when you're sending them the CV, that should be the first point. That should be the biggest one, highlighted one, however you want to put it. And if you have two sides of it in one page, that's lovely, because that's if it's all in one page and easy to look at. I'm sorry I don't have an example, but you will not you will not be disappointed if you go online and even put your specific branch of study and say CVs for BA LLB, for example. You'll find so many of them, and any ones that you like. You can have two or three versions of it. Uh, just just choose one of them and present it nicely, and just you can pass it around to your family, to friends, and do you like it? And you can get confirmations to teachers. There's no dearth of really nice, resumes and CVs online. I'm sure you'll find it.
Someone has asked to suggest some of the tips to impress the particular institute personnel during the interview.
Yeah. So look, from my experience in the long term, you see, obviously when you were there, you impress on somebody, and then they like you, and they say, okay, this is a good fit for our organization. That's why they hire you. So obviously you're out there to impress them. And all the things that I've told you generally stands you in good. These are solid things. See, these are not marketing things. I haven't spoken to you about, you know, underhand things, or, you know, sideways things, if you for want of a better word. The real values that run in the world are still the same. Uh, Good things, solid things, honest things are still the best, and they always give you a lot of confidence. When you do good things, you don't have to think about repercussions. You know, you're not doing any shifty or shady things. Then you're not really worried. No one can point a finger at you. And also remember that you'll make some mistakes sometimes, and that's no problem. I've seen very senior personnel who have come to take interviews of freshers who are CEOs, MDs on the brink of retirement, and they are even more inclined towards teaching and the students, guiding them. So they always know, this is generally a session for freshers, and people know that they are hiring freshers. If you guys are going there, they are not doing things, they're not expecting you to know it all. They just want a good talent. What they really want to see is that are they eager to learn? That's something which students always say. I'm happy to learn, and be that way. It's not hard to do that. So convey that somehow in the scheme of things when you have an interview, when you talk to them. Write it down first thing on the top, maybe on your CV or resume, that very eager to learn, and specific CV resume you're sending, so you can tell them I've learned this and this and this, which is of value to the company, and I'm fascinated by this field. I have learned so much through my college, and so much through my extracurricular, or by my choice, like going for internships or doing a project in this line. That will impress them. These are these are simple things, but quite honest things, and quite valuable things. And when they talk to you, they would know that you've already done this, if you have done an internship or a project on it, and you want to learn a bit more. So that, I think, is always, keep things simple. Even at work, when you go, the simpler things are, the better it is, and the better team player you are. Sometimes you will find when you go to work, they'll ask you these questions in interviews, that there's something which is beneficial for you, and there's something else which is beneficial to the whole team, but it's detrimental to you personally, what would you choose? Well, being a team player, you have to choose what's good for the team. And sometimes, we take the good with the bad, and that, it's very impressive to them. Saying this person is mature, they are, thinking about the bigger picture. That's what they will always think. So I would say simple things are always the best, and they will stand you in good stead.
Madiha Shaheen has asked, for the students or fresh graduates, how can we compensate for the lack of professional experience on our CVs? And what is the ideal length for a CV?
Well, look, for a fresher, a CV can be a max of 2 pages. That's enough. A max. And resume should be a single page resume. Okay. And lack of professional experience, you don't make up for it. When they're coming to hire you, they know that they're hiring freshers. So there's no lack of professional experience. It might be possibly, sometimes it happens, some girl or boy, they haven't been able to do an internship. And majority of their friends have done it and they don't have it. Then you can highlight something else in lieu of that you've done this project, you've done this extra assignments, you have worked on this paper. So it only revolves around those things, right? How much would see the trend in India is not that much of taking a break from study, going for professional work, and then coming back and continuing your studies for a year. Generally, it doesn't happen. In the West, it does happen. People even take time off for a year to travel and then they come back and continue their study. It doesn't work like that here. So that's the trend in the world, in this part of the world. And that's known by the employers and by everybody who's coming to you. So the best way that I've told you is to be the highest professional qualifications that you have done, put it on the top because that's what they're interested in. And they're not interested in 10th, 12th. Yes, you have done it. You must do it. That's how you got into bachelor. And that information is down further down. So make your CV and resume from the point of view of an employer and give them your highest qualification first, your highest professional work, which will be either your project or your internship, whatever you've done. And if it's point wise, dot points, two or three, that is the best because they don't really like to read paragraphs of it. And I don't think there's a lack of professional experience. There's only limited professional experience for students who are freshers. So somebody, even if you haven't, and others in your class or your colleagues have done extra internships, some of them might have had the opportunity, might have had the connections, might have had the time. So one or two can always stand out, but generally coming from a class school, you'll find they're similar. Everyone has done their projects, everyone has done their summer internships. So that's about what you have. I don't think there's lack of it. It's how you present yourself. So if you have a nice setup in your resume, it's aesthetically pleasing and they like it. Uh, and then your communication of listening to them and in an interview, you convey to them this is what you have learned, even if it's limited, and you're eager to learn more. I think that's what makes up for as you say in quotes, lack of professional exposure. Uh, for that should be it for a fresher.
Now, I would like to ask Hamad Shah Khan's questions. He is asking, can we add certifications in the CV or it is not necessary?
No, 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 no. You can't even say that can we add. You must add it. That is a top professional, um, certificate. So, for example, if you learned Python certified, you learned some other skill. That's a professional certification. That's almost equivalent to a degree because these days, things are very specific and specialized. So if you've done, Python is required and even higher things are required, you're going into aeronautics, you're going into whatever, robotics or any field of, humanities or law. Any certifications you have should be highlighted on the top. You must do that. It's not an option. You have to do that. Okay, hope that
Um,
answers that question.
yes, sir. Thank you so much. Sayed Noshin wants to ask that is it compulsory to have a lengthy CV for a well-profiled job, or the CV should be short and crisp?
Oh, how would you like? That's what I said. Look, ask yourself the question if you're an employer, how would you like it? Even if you have to look through 100 CVs, how would you like it? This is only an introduction. So you go and meet a company when you have an interview or a group discussion. You present yourself, whether it's online or so a CV or resume or anything that you send, your card. It's an introduction to you. That's what it's supposed to be. Look at it from a point of view of an employer. If you are getting receiving that CV, what would you like to see in it? The major points that you want to see. Okay, basic qualifications match what I need. Okay, some special interest as well. Done internship in this field of work. Nice and crisp. That's the answer. You can't go wrong. That's why I said this question. When you prepare yourself, think about your CV, whatever you are sending, even you're presenting yourself from the employer's point of view. You cannot miss the mark. 60-70% of your questions will be answered. So make it nice and crisp in one glance if they're able to see things. And you'll be happy to see that, isn't it? And you'll be happy to see that things are presented, so clearly. Whatever I need is right there in front of my eye. I don't have to flip the page, right? Make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. The next question is choosing between a research internship at a top institute or industrial internship with an average company. Which one should we prefer?
Okay. So these are two or three things in your working career. Now, for example, you have done whatever you've done, you're doing your bachelor's degree or whatever, and you are clear in your mind that look, R&D, research and development jobs are the top jobs. Even when you go into a corporate or a production company, R&D is the top thing because that's how they become better. That's how they keep in front of their field. So that's a top job, and few are able to get into it. You can try it. If you're able to get a research and development R&D position, that's great. And you can still go into corporate. So you learn there, and you come back and you finish your degree, and then you again go down the path of R&D, and you go for top companies and you try to get hired. So that's a research internship. That's a very good option. Now, also in R&D, you might be thinking about going for higher studies. So you go to higher studies somewhere. R&D will be a help. You'd go and do your MTech or your MA and whatever, MSc, and then you go for a PhD. So that's again, research work, and then you can go into teaching. So these are all top jobs, top work in educational fields, and R&D will stand you in good stead in both fields, even whether you're going to teach. This is the big difference that I found, you know, uh, studying in India and studying abroad. We have the syllabus was the same, and I did my MBA. But when I went there, the major difference that I found from here and there is the industry connect that those institutes had. The syllabus was the same. It was just the way they did those things. The exposure was immense. It was exponential compared to I would have studied the same MBA here. But also, going overseas, then, living there and getting used to their environment, being able to meet so many different kinds of people, the different culture. You learn a lot. It all prepares you. So in terms of this R&D, that's a top thing. If you get R&D, go for it. If you want to, even if you're going to teaching, I found most of the teachers over there, they're connected with R&D. They would get research grants from companies and bring it to the university, and their students would work on a project. Their fees will be paid through their grant. So it's always helpful. Um, that's the other choice is yours. If you want to just go for a basic internship somewhere and you have that choice, that's up to you. So I think any learning is good for people. It's what you make out of it, right?
Yes, sir. The next question is what strategies can I use to handle challenging interview questions?
Again, that's a good question, and I've answered that partly in the presentation. And part of it, again, think about things. Now, you will find some challenging questions. Depends on where you are coming from, which industry you're going to. You could be just going into R&D, or you're going into design, or that's some sort of individual work. That's a different point of view. And then you're going into sales or marketing. That's a different point of view. And if you receive challenging questions, always be ready for it. If you're not prepared for it, you will not be ready for it. So if you've asked that question, you're on the right track. So you can find in whatever degree you are doing, wherever you're studying, and whatever you're going to do in the future, in that field of work, you try out, get to know the market, and get to see where the problem lies, where the issue is, where the company, has problems in terms of marketing, in terms of, for example, logistics. uh, कि आपको कुछ एग्जांपल्स अगर मालूम हो इस तरह के, आपने शायद सुना हो, बहुत पुरानी टेक्नोलॉजी, इट वाज कॉल्ड JIT, जस्ट इन टाइम टेक्नोलॉजी, राइट? It was a simple thing, but execution of it was critical. The Japanese developed it, and they were making, for example, let's say cars. They manufactured Japanese cars are known all over the world. And when you're making them, then you have a big logistic issue of transporting them, having a go down, and therefore, if you have a go down, then you have an inventory. Imagine lakhs and lakhs of cars being made, and how many are the orders from the other end. Then you ship them to wherever they are, right? So storage is a big issue. Logistics, a lot of money, a lot of effort and area and land, you know, goes into it. So what they did when they did it was a revolution even till today. They would manufacture just in time so that they don't have to store them. So they have orders from all over the world, they get conveyed to them, and the delivery is at a certain date. They would manufacture it and ship it straight out. Now that's a logistic thing, right? Somebody must have thought about it. That's a big decision. And if you're able to handle that big question, so some similar questions will be there. Whatever problems an industry faces in your particular field, you get to know about it and be prepared for it. So be creative about it. You must have heard this very, very popular example where a child, a student, had solved this issue of this toothpaste being marketed in the world, and it was being, people had problems with regards to the usage. It would finish very early, and how they would increase the use of it and the time of it. So they just the one of the students, school students, just gave this idea. They had hackathon type of thing, and they said just reduce the diameter of that nozzle where it comes out from to half, and it'll be used a bit less. It'll be enough for them to use, and you know the market will be happy with it. And that's what they found. The market was really happy with that intervention. So being aware of the market and how things work, and about generally most things are very practical, especially in my end, where I work with engineering students. They're all practical things. All the instruments being made in medicine, all the ultrasound machines, X-ray machines, these pinhole surgeries are done through engineering. So with cameras and all that. So there's a lot of practical interventions, innovations, and you think about practical things, and your mind is ignited, I would say, when you find something new, when you learn something new of practical use. So always approach these issues, these questions with a practical frame of mind. And this is what it means to learn and study, to have an overall development. This is why these sessions are done. This is why I'm saying these things. I think I'm repeating myself again and again. But it's good to have these sessions where you hear things out, and this is part of your preparation outside the classroom. So when you go and face the real world, you have heard about this, you have been comfortable with that kind of environment. Because especially when they come to engineering college, they're even the students are in final year. Sometimes from third year they would take interns, but companies would talk to them as professional engineers. This is what I keep saying to my students as well. That be ready and talk to them as professional engineers. That's what they expect from you, and that's if you are aware in these things these days from our days compared, see, there was no internet then in the 90s. There were no phones. So you would find things in the book on libraries or bit here and there. There's a lot of effort behind doing projects, collecting data. You have to go there. Now it's available online. For example, if you want to go into L&T, you can just go and Google them, check out what areas they work in, what is their turnover, what's their hierarchy. You get to know them about them very quickly. So that's about preparation. So from that point of view, I would say just prepare yourself slowly, and you will be okay, because it slowly builds up. You can't learn it in one day, but if you start an engine as a CV now, you will slowly build up on it, and you'll be very oriented and anchored by the time you present yourself to someone.
Sir, how to apply for international universities for UG program, or it can be for PG as well, I think. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how to approach with the CV or resume?
देखो, with regards to a higher education overseas, that is something which is fairly available these days in the world. Majority of the countries who are having an intake of foreign students, it is positive for them, for their economy as well. Obviously, it's good for us, the students also who wish to go, it's good for you. But you're not doing them any favors by going there, they are also not doing any favors by taking you in. It is a win-win situation for both of them. So it's very positive for everybody. So it is not a fight. It is not, maybe a little bit of competition. So from my point of view, I'll tell you a few things because I've gone through that process myself. I've traveled and I've lived there for a long time. When you go and apply for universities, you should look at first and foremost your own interest. So you could be a mechanical engineer, but you can go into metallurgy, you can go into thermodynamics, you can go into fluid mechanics, you go into robotics, automobiles, whatever your field of interest. So you should find a university, or first and foremost, you have to think about a country, where who's in engineering, Germany is quite good. And a lot of our students go to Germany, obviously to the US, to Europe. So you need to choose a country where you are interested in, you know, UK or Australia or wherever. And then you will find out a few universities who are good in your field of work. So you can drill it down to a few universities, 5 to 10 in various cities. Generally, when you go down to Western countries, part-time work is a way of life. Everybody works there. You get part-time jobs, you get a visa, you get work visa, you're allowed to work 20 hours in a week, for example, and that's fine. So part-time work, you're able to make some money, get established in society, make some friends, uh, and sometimes you're able to at least, pay your rent and your, living expenses out of the work. Sometimes even your fee for the future semesters. That's a way of life anywhere in the West. So I would say if you try and go, then you drill down to the country where you want to go, and then you look at um, which university. Try and find a big city to go in, because big cities are where the most part-time work is. If you go to a university town, a small town, and believe me, there are small towns in the West. India, we have a lot of people, but I've seen in Australia, I would drive 1 hour from Melbourne, and you would have a town that says a population of 800. Just this little country town. You'll have all the amenities from the government. You'll have a hospital there. You'll have schools and all that. But if there's a university there, there are very few jobs. Maybe I worked in the library of the university. I was there in, but how many students would have that? So try and target a big city, because that's where you find part-time work, and then you just apply to those, three, four, five, six universities yourself. In the West, it's very easy to go through. You could hire an agent in New Delhi. IDB is one. place in Nehru Place where they help people. A lot of online agents who can help you get admission. But even if you apply yourself, you just go to the university website, you'll find the admission time, fill up that form, and send it in, and you'll get a response from them. Or you can go through an agent and put in your papers, all your degree and everything, school certificates, and put in an application. And you might get an offer from, out of 10, you might get an offer for two, three, four universities, and you can choose. You can choose. If you're going for higher studies like MTech, PG programs, then sometimes what I found is that you would write to a professor in that field of work. For example, I see a question from a civil engineering student. As I am a civil engineering student, how should I present my weakness without sounding unqualified? So well, I'll take this question into the loop as well. Civil engineering, uh, there are so many different things that you work in. Okay, so earthworks, soil, transportation, hydraulics, bridge engineering, steel works, concrete works. Uh, there's so many different ways of doing things. Now, green technology, the green buildings, uh, design, then site work. So there's so many different. So nobody knows everything, and especially if you are a student and you're good at one thing, you're not at other thing. So you can always, in your interviews, in your CVs, point out the things that you're strong in. And once you mention something in an interview, they start talking about it. So if you're positive at one thing, you can mention it, and they will ask you about it. And if you're not good at something, then you can always say that I'm ready to learn, but I'm better at, for example, you can say I'm better at, steel structures design instead of hydraulics. That is nothing negative, because in engineering you would be doing, you know, 30, 35 different subjects over a span of 4 years. That's the hardest thing that you do. Even if you have $1 million project, you know, you're just doing one thing. If you're designing a road, you're just designing a road. Only one thing, you're not doing other things. So the hardest thing that you find is the engineering degree. So again, and if you are or anybody else going for higher education, going for PG admissions, generally what they do is that you would write to a professor in your field who's working in that field of PG, and you would send your CV and your marks of bachelor's and say that I'm interested in doing MTech or MA or MSc in this field, and I would like to apply to your university. They would give you a recommendation, or they would even help you fill out that form and get you admission in the university. And sometimes they also have scholarships, which they have from the corporate, and they can take you on as MTech students and give you a scholarship which will partly at least cover your fee or fully cover your fee. I've seen that happen as well. That's answering both those questions, hopefully. Does that make sense, or do you want some more information on that?
Thank you, sir, for the valuable answers. Now let's move on to the next question. Why do many job applicants struggle to effectively communicate their value and relevance to potential employers despite having the necessary skills and experience?
Okay, can you repeat that question again? Sorry, I missed a part of it, but I there were two
Sure,
or
sir.
three things in there. Yeah.
No. Why do many job applicants struggle to effectively communicate their value and relevance to potential employers despite having the necessary skills and experience?
So look, that pretty much comes down to understanding and then communication. So because you're saying the question they are asking that despite having the right skills and the qualifications, they're not able to convey it to them. So the first point of conveying that is the CV or the resume, right? And that if you have a job description, for example, then you make a resume which fits to the job description. There is no way that will not be conveyed. It will have, like I said, the most important point that they are asking for in the job description. That is the first point you put on your CV under the objective. So it's clearly would address that issue, that they will see that okay, I need a Java developer and they have certification, like the other guy said, should we put on certifications or not? That's the first thing you put. He's certified in Java, or he or she is certified in Java. So you address the requirement. That is the first thing. So once you have done that, all the points that they are in the job description, if you have addressed that, that is the first part of conveying it to the employer. So that is conveyed. Now, despite after that, if you put something on your CV, when you meet them and you've gone through other loops, you have to back it up. You can't just say that I have that skill and not show it, right? So when you go in an interview, you should be prepared for it. If you have a job description that you know, then you know that what are they looking for. So you should be prepared according to that job description. So someone could be asking for a sales job, and they should know that you have a pleasing personality. You go and listen to people, and you sit down. You're relaxed. You introduce yourself nicely, and you wait for their questions, and you ask them sometimes questions softly, and don't beat about the bush. Talking about irrelevant things, trying to trip them, because you can't. They're already in that field for 10, 12 years. You can't. And like I said before, if you answer 3 questions out of 5, it's a good interview. So all these things would convey to them that you have the skills, but it needs preparation. It comes to some people, it comes naturally because you're a good speaker. Also, it'll come down to, now in engineering, you don't really have to be very good in English. You are, that's great. If you're not, if you're technically good, companies will hire you. That's a plus for engineers. But in other cases, outside of engineering, they would look at good communication skills. Now, if you don't have, a good grasp of English, for example, and the interview is only happening in English, you might feel a bit underconfident and you get 5 minutes and you don't speak too much. And therefore, you're not able to convey. Although you have the skills, you don't have the communication. For them, I'll give you a really good formula, and which will hopefully help you, because it's helped me quite a bit. And I found it to be practically possible without relying upon external agencies, without spending extra money, without spending, out of having a schedule. And just read in English. So whatever you're able to, whatever you're interested, any magazines, even if not curriculum books, if you want to better your English, for people who want really better their English, just read for 1 month, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you like, any novels, any books, any magazines, even if it's curriculum, that's great. Start to read. Therefore, you're not relevant, you're not relying upon any third party coaching. You're not have to pay anyone anything. You don't have to take a specific time out whenever you're free. Do that for a month and you will start to see that your English improves. You will start to think in English sometimes. If you spend a month like this, 15, 20 days, minutes a day, you will find that it suddenly there's a change and you'll become more and more confident. That's always, and that this is how you convey, right? You make a CV, you convey, then you go for an interview. This is how you would convey to them that you have the skills, that if you have communication, then you're confident, you're able to speak, and therefore you will convey it to them. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does. Practice makes a man perfect. So I
Yeah.
think this aligns with it. So the next question is, in interviews, generally by what percentage questions are from the academics?
Look, I would say it depends on the job description again. If it's a really, like I say, R&D job, for example, research and development, it'll be predominantly academic. So, 80, 20%. 80% would be academic, 20% would be general. If it's a sales job, it's sometimes the other way around. It's 80% general, see how your communication is, what your personality is, how do you carry yourself, how do you listen. And then 20% is, academic, because they can teach you that how you want to sell one particular product. And you can just go to companies and, do that. So it ranges between them. So generally, that's what I found.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I think there are no further questions. So
Okay.
we are concluding today's session. I invite Abba Shad to present the vote of thanks.
Okay. Just one last question. I see someone just how sir, how can we apply for scholarships in abroad universities in regards to a master's course? Like I said, scholarships are generally, if they're given by an organization, you apply to them. But if they're given by the university, some professor has it. If you're going for master's courses, so you would send your CV to them and address an application saying that I'm interested in such and such field under yourself. Can I do, MTech or MSc or MA? Um, I would like to apply for university and study under yourself, your guidance or PhD. So generally, I've found that scholarships are, if it's an organization, you just write to them if you find that. But if it's through in a university, then it's generally master's courses. It's with the teachers and professors. If they see your CV is good enough and you've had a nice communication with them and they offer you that position, they might offer you a scholarship as well, generally speaking. Okay, so I will thank all of you now. It has been a good session. We've gone over the time we were specified, so I'm happy we did. Hopefully, it has been good for everybody. And I will thank again the organizers, all the organizers who were here, everybody who attended the session, uh, and everybody else involved. Hopefully it's been beneficial. It's been very good for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Abba Shad, please
Yes.
present. Please present the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abba Shah, student of Aligarh Muslim University and a member of Aligarh Janesa. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Mohammad Farhan Saeed, Civil Development Engineer, for his enlightening and thought-provoking session. The expertise and knowledge you have shared with us today are truly invaluable, and we are fortunate to have had an opportunity to learn from them. Special thanks to the founder of the Aligarh Renaissance, Mr. Asfar Ali Khan, founder Aligarh Renaissance, for organizing the valuable session. I also thank our enthusiastic participant for making this session interactive and engaging. Your presence and thoughtful contribution added great value to this event. I encourage all participants to apply strategies discussed today in their own journey. Together, let us strive for excellence and success in this pursuit of our goals. Thank you all for your active participation and enthusiasm. Wishing you the very best in your endeavors. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, and see you guys again soon. Thanks, Asfar sir, for me as well. And thanks for conducting the session. We'll be in touch.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. We took a lot of time, and the session was really very engaging and impactful.
Thank you. I'm great. I'm thankful it was. Okay. See you guys soon then. Bye. Assalamu alaikum.